Hi, I'm Deneen Rodney, and thank you for joining us on Gritfully. Today we'll be talking about something every entrepreneur, especially entrepreneurs of color, need to hear. Restraint and Mindset, preventing small business failure through grit. In our first episode, we introduced the concept of grit and its crucial role in the entrepreneurial journey. Today, we'll dive deeper by exploring why so many small businesses fail and how adopting the right mindset and practicing restraint can help prevent that. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Dr. Sandi Webster. Dr. Webster is a coach, speaker, author, podcast host, and chapter chair for Women's President Organization, New York 1 and New York 3. She has over 35 years of experience working with and consulting for Fortune 500 companies, including American Express, AT&T, and Verizon. She was a founder of Consultants to Go, a multi-million-dollar marketing and analytics consulting company that made the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list 6 times. That's right, 6 times. She then sold to a private equity company. Dr. Webster is here to share her insights on restraint, mindset, and grit, essential tools for any entrepreneur aiming for long-term success. Dr. Webster, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Deneen. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk about such an important topic. And have we met in person? Really before? Once or twice?
We were in Colorado together.
Yes.
Remember you were showing me the ropes?
Thank you.
To kick things off, I want to address the hard truth that most small businesses fail within the first few years. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, around 20% of new businesses fail within the first 2 years, 45% within the first 5 years, and 65% within the first 10 years. These numbers are worse when we look into the minority groups alone. Many people might attribute this to a lack of funding, poor planning, or inadequate management. However, for entrepreneurs of color, these challenges are often compounded by systematic barriers like limited access to capital and networks. Dr. Webster, in your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs of color face when starting and scaling their businesses?
Well, Deneen, I think entrepreneurs of color often face unique challenges when starting and scaling their businesses. I think it's even greater when they're trying to scale, right? And the biggest hurdle is access to capital. Mm-hmm. Studies have shown that entrepreneurs of color are less likely to receive funding from traditional financial institutions and even from venture capitalists. That's due to a bunch of things. I think one thing I hadn't thought about was credit rating. Yes. Credit rating is key when you're trying to get capital.
Then and that's personal credit rating too.
Personal credit rating. When you're even if it's your business, everything runs on your personal credit. And I don't think we're schooled to think that way. We just didn't have the advisors to give us that, right? And then there are systemic biases that's already in the system. Mm-hmm. Compounding that, we have a lack of network. Mm-hmm. We're not connected to potential investors at all. So most of my friends turn to personal savings when they do that. Absolutely. But Peggy and I, when we started our business, we decided that we would not use our own money. We'd put in as little money as possible because you do need something to start. And the business should be a self-sustaining business.
It should be.
If we can't make it work, then we need to stop and go back to corporate. Right. If we can't make it work. Okay. So we invested in as little as possible into the business. Okay. We bought computers, and then we took whatever money we put in and made sales calls to clients. Okay. Those were the 2 things we identified as the biggest thing we needed to do. Mm-hmm. And I think our out-of-pocket that we put in the business was $2,500 each.
Wow. Okay,
we said that's $5,000. Right. If we can't make this ship run on $5,000, then we need to go back to our day jobs.
Okay, and that was a service business too.
Yes, it was a service business. But we didn't make it a habit to run back and take money out of our savings. We're like, this is what we're starting with, and let's work with this.
Okay.
Now, another challenge is just the lack of representation and mentorship. Mm-hmm. We don't get a lot of that. And having role models and mentors who understand the specific challenges that entrepreneurs of color face is really valuable to us because we need mentors who look like ourselves.
Yes, we do.
And since there are not a lot of them, we kind of fight over the ones that we have, right?
Right.
However, there's often a real shortage of those mentors, and it makes it difficult for entrepreneurs to really find guidance and support. Additionally, entrepreneurs of color may face discrimination and bias in the marketplace. That can affect everything from customer acquisition to partnerships to collabs.
Yes.
Because you got to know people to do these things. And it creates additional barriers to growing and succeeding in the workplace. So to maximize those chances of success, entrepreneurs of color can focus on building really strong networks and not just networks, but communities.
Yes. Yes.
So each one tell one, like your grandmother used to tell you, each one tell one.
Yes.
You have to share the information when you meet someone.
Right.
Like I just met someone today that I think would be a great fit. I'll pass her around to everyone. Hey, I met a Black girl. That's really good. I'll go talk to her.
Okay.
And I did that while I was in the corporate world as well. And I did that in my business. If I meet someone I think can impact other women of color, I introduce them. So that's a really big thing for us. And the way that I started out building that network was in the early days of my business, we didn't have a CFO. We had a bookkeeper and an accountant, and that's mostly what Black people have. A bookkeeper and you're lucky if the bookkeeper and the accountant are the same person because we just can't afford to do that. But we did not even consider getting a loan at that time because a lot of women don't like getting loans. Right. That's where you use your money because you can't get the loan, right? But we built up our credit. We had really excellent credit ratings, but we said, no, we can do this without getting a loan. One thing they ask you when you go for a loan is to put up your home as a collateral. Right. And we're like, we're not doing that. We need a roof over our heads. We are just not doing that. So when we built our business enough to get a CFO, he's the one who mentored us. And one of the first things he said is, we need relationships with a bank. Because we had the bank with a heart, the little bank down the road from us that... But when you need big money, the little banks, even though they're nice, they will give you a certain amount that they're not getting up off of really exactly what you need. So he said, please build up your banking network and the relationships with your bank. And that's one of the best advice he gave us because he already had a strong network. He came from corporate and he was a CFO in the corporate world. So he introduced and extended his connections to us. And that really helped us a lot. We learned a lot getting to know bankers. We know what they want, what they're asking for, and made sure that we gave it to them. Or we started building the business and building our credit so when we needed it, it was already there. So he told us take out a line of credit, which is what we did instead of taking a loan. Because with the line, you just draw on it as you need it. Instead of taking out $250,000 and you're paying all the time on that. Sometimes we only needed to take it once a year because with a line of credit, you just have to use it once per year. So if we didn't need it, we would just take whatever money and pay a bill with it and pay it off, pay it off the next time. It shows that we were using it, but we're also building up our credit with the bankers. So that was something we did because we wanted to have that money for the future. So the time to get the money is not when you need it. It's when you start to build it. So that it's there when you need it. The other thing that we don't do a lot of is leveraging technology and social media because that could really help build your brand and give a wider audience. I think a lot of us are on social media, but not for the right things.
What's the right things?
Well, we do a lot of personal things and we'll show our babies. But on the business side, you need to be equally present on social media. You do need people to get to know you, but put out things about your business, about what you're doing. If you go to an event, put that out there. So we tend to be lopsided
Right.
on social media. But we need to do that because entrepreneurs need a really strong online presence for that.
It's interesting. I'm speaking about online presence and also entrepreneurs. The landscape has changed as it relates to funding. You know, I'm sure when you started your business, there weren't as many folks that were out there giving funding, you know, VC
Right,
funding, those kinds
right.
of things. We know that for entrepreneurs of color, it's more difficult to get funding. But what's your thought about funding just generally, as opposed to getting a line of credit or how do you feel about founders getting funding?
It's needed.
Okay.
You have to have money to make money.
You do? Yeah.
So if you're not getting it out of your revenue stream, you're
Right.
going to have to get it somewhere.
Right.
And I think that's what we should start thinking about.
Okay.
The bootstrapping is great. You know, money comes in different ways.
Right.
And bootstrapping is one of them. So crowdfunding was a big thing,
Okay.
part of bootstrapping, not going to the bank. Your family and your friends are another
Option
big
too.
thing. I try to stay away from that.
Right.
Because
Yes.
once you owe people money
Yes.
and, you got to meet them at Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Right.
Just not trying to do that. But there are platforms out there like Kickstarter and Indiegogo that you raise small amounts of money at a time. Like you could put up how much you need and
Then you
they'll
get
fund
that.
it. And so that's one way of doing it.
Definitely.
But
I guess my concern sometimes is money equals control and money equals expectations. So, and sometimes those expectations and control might not be in alignment with what it is you want to do with your business.
then you better not ask for money.
That's right. I'm just saying that you got to think about that, So, yeah.
If you're willing to borrow money, there are going to be strings attached to that money. And for the bank, the big string is you have to pay on time, or I'm going to charge you interest rates. So if you borrow from your family, you're not expecting to be charged interest rates.
Right. That's true.
But let me tell you, I will charge you an interest rate in a minute.
you should.
You don't give it back to me on time.
Right. Right.
It's just like the bank.
Right.
Like I needed that money for you to give it back to do something else with it, to turn it over.
Yeah.
And it's my money. We promise, if you give your family member, put a little note in there.
Right.
That if you don't pay on time, I bet you they pay on time.
Right. That's true. That's true. That is true. That's true.
But yeah, funding is difficult.
It is.
And we can talk about that a little bit later, but funding is a difficult thing
challenge
for people of color.
So, it's interesting, and we're going to talk a little bit about restraint. Many small businesses fail because of impulsive decisions, jumping at the wrong opportunities, expanding too quickly, or chasing vanity goals like the 30 under 30 list. But restraint, and practice intentionally can prevent some of these common pitfalls. Dr. Webster, can you share with our audience how practicing restraint helped you in building your company, Consultants to Go, and how it's contributed to its long-term success? And especially emotional restraint, considering how challenging it can be for Black women in this field, or the perception of it to be challenging.
Yes, I can address that. I want to go back to one thing you said about,
Sure.
The vanity goals.
Right.
Like 30 under 30. Our perception is that it's a vanity goal. Other people's perception is look at the people. This is a place to find the up and coming next generation of people.
Got it.
Whether it's 30 under 30, 40 under 40.
Okay.
But these are the people who are making boss moves.
Got you.
That we really should need to know. So I would say strive to get on one of those lists.
Okay.
Because those are lists that are being watched by the people who are going to give you those dollars. And it might be vanity to us,
Right.
but to them, it says something completely different. This person has the motivation and the drive to be doing things, to be making boss moves, to be on that list.
Gotcha.
So, when you say those lists, I use that as PR for myself when I was in a company. You just said it, Inc. 5,000 lists, 6-7 times.
Right.
Those are things my banker looks at that.
No, I do. But I think that when we think about 30 under 30, I guess what I was talking about is the idea that the entrepreneurial journey is a journey, right?
Yes, it is.
It is a journey. And it's a journey that takes time and resilience. So I guess in my mind, I was just kind of getting to the idea that it's great to be 30 under 30, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful if you don't make that list.
Correct. And not everyone's going to make this
Right.
list. But I have to say, again, once you make that list,
Right.
it tells something that
About-
someone else
It's gonna
is thinking of you
Right.
and see the potential
in you.
that you have,
Okay.
especially at the 30 under 30.
Got it.
I might be following this person for the next 10 years. Yeah. I just had to say that.
Okay,
But,
okay.
practicing restraint is really a crucial element that we used in building my old company, Consultants to Go. And it did play a significant role in our long-term success. Because restraint in this context means being deliberate and thoughtful about your decisions. And I have to say, Peggy and I did a lot of that in the beginning.
Okay.
We sat down, we wrote things out. We made sure, we held each other accountable. So if you can't practice restraint there, you probably won't get to the first year. You just won't.
Right.
Because every little shiny object that jumps in front of you, you can't grasp.
No.
I remember one of the things that I was a member of, like every industry, every women's group, just all of those things. And some of them you don't even have time to attend.
Right.
So that was a waste of my dollars
Right.
in membership. And we had to pull back and say, which events are we attending? We can't attend every conference.
No.
Which one is critical to my business? Which membership am I finding that benefits me and benefits my business? And for me, Women's Presidents Organization was one of them. Once you met the $1 million goal. Under that, I was in NABO and IWEC in the Chamber of Commerce because those were the things that were important to me at that time.
Okay.
So, yeah, when you practice restraint, you have to go back and take a look and really think about what's important to you. And one of the key things was in financial management. We were very cautious about how we spent our resources, because we wanted every single dollar that we made to be invested wisely. And remember, I said I wasn't going back in my money.
You did say that.
So I did. So we
Do you
had
think
to
that do you think a lot of entrepreneurs of color do that? They go back into their money?
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course. And it's hard not to, especially for people who have to make payroll, or it's very hard not to pull it out.
Right.
But at some point, when you pull it all out and then you still have nothing, where do you turn at that point? So it's better to sit and figure it out. And that restraint we're talking about, saying, where can I cut corners? What are the things that I'm doing that I don't need to do on that? So part of that too is client satisfaction. So we were very selective about the clients that we chose to work with. And that's because we know we didn't have the bandwidth to work with the world. So we focused on building the long-term relationships, the people who we were aligned with, both in our values and in our business goals. Someone didn't do both. Because
Right.
values are really important.
What are those values?
Well, one of them is, if you lie to me, you're dead. Like if I catch you in a lie, like a blatant lie.
Right.
You have lies and then you have lies.
Okay.
Okay, a little white lie or a little, but if you blatantly lie to me about something, I will be looking at you cross-eyed until you die. It's just like,
That's so funny because how I say it is that integrity is important to me. But I like the way you said, if you lie to me, you die.
but
I like
it's just that's my personal value.
I think it's important.
It is important. And you can have integrity even if you can say you have integrity, but your actions speak louder than words.
I agree.
So, and lying to me is a big action.
I
But
agree.
even if I nod and say yes, I'll still be looking at you cross-eyed in my heart.
All right. So what other value? So we have lying. What else is another value you have?
One of the other values I have is I'm a process person. Communication is big for me.
Okay.
I write everything out.
Okay.
I have all my stuff. So as I deal with people, I like to go through my process.
Okay.
And I took a Myers-Briggs test a million years. I've taken a million of these tests. And they come out the same way. People think I'm not an introvert,
Right.
but I really am, because I sit and I think.
Okay.
So even if I'm talking to you and I don't respond right away, I'll go back and I'll think about it, and then I'll be like, oh,
Okay.
and then I'll get back to you. But that communication piece
is important.
Is very important.
Okay.
Well, I don't care if it's email,
Right.
cow whistle or whatever, but you've got to tell me what I need to do, and also what you need from me as well, right?
That's
So
important.
I don't like to get my wires crossed.
How many values do you have?
I have a lot.
You have a lot.
And
okay.
I think most people have a lot, but they don't know it's inherent to them. And so they don't never really call it out.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I'm a spiritual person.
Me too. Right.
So that's important to me. And I can deal with anyone, even if they're not the same religion as myself.
Right.
But I just like someone
That's spiritual.
who's grounded. So that's some of my...
What do you say to entrepreneurs that may be tempted to do it all or to urge to expand too quickly, holding off on maybe carefully evaluating opportunities? How can they prevent these common pitfalls?
Well, evaluation's a big part of my stuff, right?
Right.
Like I said, I write stuff out and I make sure I do my research on things. And I know that Peggy and I both came from a marketing background.
Okay.
And I came from analytics before marketing.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm that type A kind of person. Actually, I have two sides of my brain working, the analytics side and the marketing side.
Okay.
So I really like to sit and go through the process. So I prioritize and I plan things.
Okay.
If it's not on my calendar, it's not getting done.
Okay.
So I thank you guys for putting all your stuff on my calendar because, that's one thing I think we all need to have some kind of a clear roadmap of where we're going. We do our strategic plans. We do our one-page business plan.
Right.
Hopefully you're doing your one-page business plan.
Oh, you caught me. I'm going to have to get that done.
Okay, there you go. There you go. But those things are really important to guide you and the accountability of it to make sure it's done and that you share it with your team is a big deal. You have to learn to delegate. It's one way I have to do. Get an assistant. And sometimes we don't have the money, but get an intern. They are great.
Right.
Every intern that I trained, I wound up hiring.
Wow. Okay.
Because hey, I spent a year teaching you.
Right.
I'm not giving you up to someone else.
That makes sense.
Right? Yes. So get an intern if you can.
Okay.
I had one woman who came to me. She left corporate and she said, I don't know how to do Excel. I don't know how to do PowerPoint. I was just in a different part of the business. I didn't know. Can I sit with you and learn? I'm like, well, you can come intern. If that's what you want to call it, you could come intern, but I tell you, you'll have a job for life after that. She's still with the company that I left, that I sold.
Wow. Okay.
Because her skills, she learned all her skills and then, go to school and brush up on those skills, right? Seek your mentorships, get some advice that you need. I'm big on advisory boards.
Yes, I know you're big on advisory boards, and you've talked to me about that and the importance of it.
Did you get your advisory board yet, Ms.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
She's holding me accountable.
Yes.
I know that's important.
Yes. And stay adaptable. You have to stay adaptable all the time.
What does that mean, stay adaptable?
Things are changing. Life is moving.
It does.
You have to learn to go with the flow.
Right.
This pandemic happened. Some people who were not adaptable went out of business.
Okay. Right.
That's the thing.
Agree.
You didn't have a plan in place. Your what if I get hit by a bus, we call it. Who's going to run this company if I walk out and get hit by a bus? You should be thinking about that all the time. And not only thinking, but putting it in writing. So if I do get hit by a bus, someone has a piece of paper and say, oh, Denise's in charge. So you have to adapt because things are moving all the time. So those are some of the things I came from the travel industry where I worked, and the pandemic pretty much decimated.
Yes, it did.
They're back up. But the people who didn't adapt, some left what they were doing and went and made gloves and masks and made money, right? As long as they were functioning and paying their employees, it's all good. And then there were those who were in the travel business and they created something new out of that.
Right.
All of a sudden you had these packages to these amazing places. Right. I went to the Maldives for like $1,000, but that's what came out of the
pandemic.
And then they started, you could buy now and travel 2 years from now, all of these things. But that came out of the pandemic.
Right.
So if you're not adapting, a lot of hotels closed, a lot of different things closed because they did not adapt.
You know, it's funny, speaking about adapting, I was thinking about talking about mindset in terms of building a foundation for success. A lot of businesses fail because their founders lack the right mindset. Whether it's because they aren't prepared for challenges or can't handle setbacks, the concept of grit ties directly into this because it's about the mental resilience to keep pushing forward even when things get tough. You've seen firsthand how important mindset is, both in corporate settings and with your own company. How does adopting a growth mindset help entrepreneurs navigate the challenges they face?
Well, I have a bunch to say on that. I probably can't go into all of it today. But adopting a growth mindset is really incredibly beneficial for entrepreneurs because we have so many challenges when we're building and scaling a company. And you have to have a growth mindset. And this concept was developed by Carol Dweck, who's a psychologist. And it's really the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed through hard work. If you dedicate yourself to hard work, you will get somewhere at some point. So this perspective fosters a lot of resilience, adaptability, and a love for learning. You've got to have a love for learning to have the right mindset. Now, when entrepreneurs embrace that growth mindset, they view challenges as opportunities rather than some insurmountable obstacle that's there. You have to have the right mindset to get through that. It's a challenge and it's a journey, like you said. So, for instance, if I have a marketing strategy that doesn't yield the right results, a growth mindset entrepreneur will analyze what went wrong, learn from the experience, and adjust their approach.
Right.
Because you're learning all the time, so you have to have that frame of mind. So Peggy and I had a growth plan. We were looking to double revenues year over year. I think at that time, we probably were just right before we hit the $1 million mark. We're like, we need to speed this thing up. Let's try to double revenues year over year. So we put a strategic plan together. Again, process and writing it out. And it was a growth plan. Part of our strategic plan was a growth plan. So you're either going to get more business from the same client, because you got to know how you're going to get this. If I only have one client, either I need to get more clients, or I'm going to have to bleed this one dry out of everything that I have. So we kept a scorecard of how much we're getting. We're tracking and we measure because we want to double revenues. So half a year, if you're not halfway to doubling, you better do something else to get it. But we kept a scorecard, and I suggest you do that. Either they have a lot of tools out there now, but you can just use an Excel spreadsheet and just go month by month and see, what am I getting, right? Innovators have a growth mindset. You can't innovate and stay where you are. You have to be moving upwards all the time. So entrepreneurs with that mindset are more likely to experiment with new ideas, and they'll take calculated risks. Right. Because I don't say you can't take risks. You should. And some of us are afraid to take risks. But it should be calculated. What if this happens? You should know both sides, good and bad. If this happens, I'll do A. If that happens, then I'll do B. But then you make a decision. If you go with A, then stick with A. But it has to be a calculated risk. Everything's moving so fast now today that you have to be adaptable in order to compete. And overall, I think adopting a growth mindset with entrepreneurs, help them be more optimistic, have a better outlook, and proactive.
Got it.
I know you participated in a Goldman Sachs.
Yes.
We did too.
Okay.
I said we because Peggy was the one who signed up, but I did all the homework with her, and I even went to some of the courses and eventually helped to write a class for Goldman because of that. But if you have a growth mindset, you always want to find things that are going to help you grow. That was one of the vehicles.
So looking for those kinds of resources.
Of course. And a lot of them are free. A lot of them are out there, but you just have to go look for it. There are resources if you're under $1 million, because I have like workshop in business opportunities that I took back in 1993.
It's called Workshops and Business Opportunities.
Yes.
Is that still happening?
Yes, it is.
And it's for businesses under $1 million.
Yes.
Okay.
You could just be thinking of an idea.
Okay.
You can go there. It's a 16-week course.
Is it a nationwide program?
It's not nationwide, but they have virtual learning now, so
Okay.
people from all over are coming on.
Okay.
It was created in New York, up in Harlem,
Okay.
and it's still there. I'm now a business advisor for that group. They taught me, and now I'm teaching them. And it worked. It's very effective. It's very low cost. I'm going to say little over $100 for 16-week course.
That's great.
And they have amazing people who come in and talk to you about marketing, sales, all the things that if you're like a mom and pop dry cleaner or barber shop,
It's important.
you're not writing out a plan, and you're just kind of going day to day. The way you start those businesses, you're doing something you know how to do.
Right.
And you don't necessarily know the business side.
Right.
So that's kind of what Weibo does, but it also helps you form a really strong network of other people you could call on. Because there are all these people in the class, Goldman Sachs, everybody still meets, right? Do you go to your Goldman?
Well, I'm bad. I don't go to the Goldman, but I do respect the power of the networking and the programs that are available for entrepreneurs. Definitely take advantage. Goldman Sachs is definitely one for sure.
And we met in what, Sage? Was it Sage?
Sage, I think we did meet at Sage.
It was Sage.
Right, there's Sage is Capital One, but there are many programs.
Yes.
I think Goldman Sachs has another program for Black women.
I did Tuck.
Right, I did Tuck as well.
Tuck.
Dartmouth's Tuck School was a great program too.
Yeah.
Columbia University had a program that I did before the pandemic. I'm a big believer in these types of programs, not just for an educational standpoint, but as you said, for a networking.
Absolutely.
Yes, and even with WPO, it's wonderful networking. Networking is not necessarily associated with getting business, so to speak. Right.
Correct.
It's just building your net worth with your network, and that's important too.
And I have to say, having been a part of WPO it was a goal Peggy and I had to reach the $1 million. We're like, we want to join WPO, so we better hurry up and make $1 million. And we took that really
seriously.
Yes, we were very serious about it. And once we got there, all the ladies really gave us advice or just talk about things that they did. And now, after I sold the business, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to lose my WPO ladies. But I didn't, because I became a facilitator,
right.
chapter chair for
Which
the
is nice.
Yes.
It's a very strong
something
network.
else. Yes, it is.
Speaking about these programs, and how it shapes your experience and your approach to business growth, if any, what personal impact did the program have on you? And I guess, what was it like as a Black woman in that space?
Those programs don't have a lot of Black women.
They don't.
And it's my goal right now to bring in
more
women of color.
Yes.
I should say. It doesn't have to be Black, Latino, Chinese, Korean. I don't care.
Yes.
But we do need diversity.
Yes, we do.
On those fronts.
Right.
So when you're in a room and you're the only one, I think I was lucky enough when I started in WPO, there were one or two other Black women in my group.
Right.
But I had women who came into the group and left because they didn't feel
comfortable.
There's no such thing as DEI back then.
No.
They just didn't feel like they belonged in that room, or you're not saying things that pertains to me.
Right.
I kept it on a very strict business level, but these ladies became my friends later on. They're like sisters, more so than friends. So yeah, when you walk into the room in these spaces, you are going to feel uncomfortable sometimes.
Yes.
But I grew up in corporate, whereas there were not a lot of Black women back then. And so I got comfortable with my uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
And you have to to acknowledge that to yourself and say, okay, I'm the black person here, or the person of color, or the different. Could be anything.
Different,
woman,
right?
being a woman in a room of men. They don't care about color. They just see that you're a woman. So you have to get comfortable with that. And I feel that we have to pull others behind us.
Absolutely.
Where we're in a space and somebody's saying, oh, you're discriminating now. Well, I'm discriminating now because I was discriminated against. And so I have to pull some of those people up with me.
Yes, you do.
and it has to be purposefully
Yes.
pulled up.
Yes.
I will mentor. I will do whatever I need to do
Yes.
because no one is giving them a chance. And if you can't give your own people a chance, who else do you expect to do that?
Absolutely.
So I think mentoring is a big component of that. In the corporate world, it's sponsorship.
Yes. Sponsorship is very important.
So I mentor, I don't know how many ladies I mentor right now. I really can't even. Sometimes I get an email as someone I hadn't talked to in 2 years, and they're like, hey, I'm hitting you up because of this. I'm like, okay, this is what you do. Yeah. I was on a pitch contest yesterday, and I went to support one person.
Right.
And there goes two of my mentees on this pitching, and I'm like, so who do I root for now?
Oh.
But, it happens. You have to. I just gave everybody a shout out. You did well. You did well. You did well.
Everyone feeling firm. Absolutely.
And so, mentoring is a big component of that. And I really think as part of your journey, especially if you're trying to double your thing. And the mentoring thing, I'm back to advisory board again. Right. That's your own personal mentoring that you have right there if you form an advisory board. Right. I believe and you get to choose them.
That is true. I have an unofficial one. I have to make them official.
Yes, you do. But, that's part of a business strategy is to get advice where you need it. I find Black women don't do that. If you're looking at advisory board versus board of directors, that's at even different level.
Yes, it is.
And there's a movement to get just women, period, on advisory boards. On advisory boards. But there's an underlying vision of having more women of color also being on advisory boards. So those are things that we need to do.
Now, this is such great advice and such a great vantage point, but let's talk about how do people prepare for the challenges? Can you speak more about work ethic or mindset that's required to get through the hard times of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, we talked about mindset a little bit.
We did.
I would say you have to shift your mindset all the time when you're an entrepreneur. So there are two sides of you. There's the personal side, and then there's the business side. I know people talk about work-life balance, and there's no such thing. This thing is a balance. Okay. It's never going to be balanced if you're an entrepreneur, but you do have to integrate it into your life. I call it work-life integration because I'm very clear, I can come to your dance recital tomorrow, but you're not going to see me at the other thing because I've got to be in Dallas opening up a new office tomorrow. Right. So let's put this on the calendar, and no mouth has to be pushed up, no anything, because I'm giving you communication, back to communication again, right? But your mindset have to shift on between personal and business. And I don't think men have the same shift that we have. Right.
That's true.
Because we're focused on the kids and we're the official caretaker.
Right.
Even though the man is there, we're
the
it.
Official. Okay.
We get slammed if we don't bake a freshly made bread and bring to class, or cake or whatever. Go buy Entenmann's.
Right.
It's all good. Right. We have to have our mindset to say we're doing the best we can and let people know when we're doing the best we can. And like I'll go back to it again. It's on my calendar. It's not getting done. Right. So if I tell you I'm coming to your dance recital, I will be at your dance recital. Right. But also I'm sharing my calendar with you to know that I've got to be on a flight in the morning to go someplace else. Right. So, I'm catching one piece, but the other piece, take a video and send it over. Right. And it sounds so cold, and we get guilt. Right. We get guilted out. Right. But you have to have a mindset of, this is what's important to me. And you can have two things that are important to you. Your family is important. And your business is important. Yeah. And you need to make sure that your family understands that, or your friends. I had friends who used to get together every Friday evening and hang, and I'm not going to see you
all the time.
I might make one. I might make one every 3 months. But you have to understand my perspective as well.
Which is important.
So it's a lot of communication that happens with that.
How can you maybe elaborate on how your mindset as an entrepreneur has changed throughout your entrepreneurial journey? Has your experience as a Black woman shaped how you approach being an entrepreneur? You mentioned a little bit around the fact that you have to sponsor people of color. Has it changed in other ways?
I think again, back to the two-sided thing, right? In this point in my life, I want to be selfish and take some personal time, but my mindset isn't shifted.
Okay.
So I'm in that state of flux.
Right.
My mindset. Right. And I know I need to take some time for myself. But life happens.
It does.
Life happens. Right now, my husband has been sick since May.
Sorry to hear that. Okay.
He had his leg amputated. It's a whole change of life. Yes. So my mindset at the time is, I'm selling my business.
Right.
I'm doing my own little business here that I could do whenever I want.
Right.
Well, all of that came to a stop.
Yes.
And now my mindset is really more in a caregiving mode.
Approach. Okay.
And so, yeah, your mindset's going to change based on the phase of life that you're in. Okay. But one thing I stay strong with is having women succeed as entrepreneurs. Okay. So I still do my coaching. I still do my mentoring. I still chair the WPO group, but I'm not taking on anything more than that, right? But yeah, my mindset when it comes to women entrepreneurs are really strong. That's why even if regardless of whatever political affiliation I have, Kamala is going to be in the White House because I'll personally pick her up and put her in the White House because she's a woman. And this country has not had a woman, black, white, or indifferent.
Right.
And so those are things I feel very strongly about. And my mindset is very laserly focused on having women succeed.
You know, it's so interesting to hear how you approach mindset. And part of the idea behind this podcast in terms of who we invite to participate and get perspective on, they've got to have been in business at least 10 years.
Okay.
And the idea is that, you know what, if you make it to 10 years, that means that you're doing something that is sustainable, so to speak.
You know, if you make it to 1 year, you're doing something that a lot of people have done.
Okay. It's funny because as we look, there's a lot of statistics around Black women and women of color becoming entrepreneurs, right? And jumping into the entrepreneur landscape. Looking back at your journey, what are some things you'd say to these women that are in year 1, year 6 months, year 3? What are some things they have to think about as it relates to mindset? We know that there's a lack of funding. What are some tools that they really have to think about? And besides the practical stuff, because, I mean, you know, we can spend time talking about insurance, legal, and all that stuff. But what are some things?
Well, disappointment, embracing disappointment is a big thing.
Yes.
I'm not good sometimes with being disappointed. So let's say you got on a sales call and you thought, oh, I rock that.
Right. This is so good. Yes.
I did. Man, I came with it.
Yes, you did. Right.
And then you get the thing, it's like, no, it's kind of difficult not to be disappointed. But again, back to mindset, you have to continue.
But that's where the grit comes in.
Yes.
And not only that, but you might have said you rocked it, and you know you might have. And that might be, even if you rocked it, it still might be the circumstances, the systemic circumstances, all types of circumstances that may cause you to even rock it and still not get the sale.
So one mindset shift that I had around that was there's no such thing as a no. It's not a not right now.
And not right now too. Yeah.
It's not right now.
Right.
Because if you say no, you'll never go back to that person or you'll never go back to that industry. But they might have things on their side.
Absolutely.
Why it can't happen right now. And they're just giving you the final no.
Right.
But if you go back to them next year, it might be, you know, the time is right. And that happened to us. We had a client that we were going after. We just knew if we got this client, it would be a big multi-million-dollar deal. It would have been. And it was. But it took us like 10 years.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, not everyone can afford to wait 10 years to get a client.
No.
But if you're dealing with corporations, like big corporations, you have to understand they have a procurement process with like 1,000 of the same people like you that's in there, and someone has the contract at that time. They're not trying to let it go.
No, they're not. They're not. And well, not only that, but I think you have to be able to say, I rocked it, and you don't get it, and you still got to be gracious.
Yes.
You have to
and
be
say
gracious.
thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Right?
I say it all the time.
It's a practice. Those are my practice drills.
Yeah, I say thank you for the opportunity because they didn't have to give you the opportunity.
Correct.
And I kind of think about that in terms of humility and having that mindset, and that's something that can be challenging sometimes.
Ask.
Yes.
I've learned to ask, what could I have done better? And then they might elaborate out of the room. Listen, we have someone with a contract for 5 years.
Right.
Come back to me in 5 years, or
Exactly.
unless they screw it up, we'll reach out. But there are other things going on. It's not all about you.
That's true. That is true.
At that moment.
Right.
It's not
true.
all about you in totality. So you have to learn, I find, to embrace disappointments or flip the script and,
Absolutely.
say like I did right now. That's a big mindset shift when you have to do that.
Has there ever been a time when we think about this mindset changing and flipping the script, so to speak? Has there been a moment in your journey where you felt discouraged or wanted to give up?
Yes. I don't get them a lot.
How did you move past it?
I don't get them a lot. I have to say that because of that mindset that I have. Like if stuff doesn't happen, I'll pivot really fast. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, let's go to plan B, or, let's try something else. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes I'll sit and talk to Peggy and go, okay, well, we sucked at that. Maybe it was us. We sucked at it. Let's figure out how to do it. So I move very quickly. But the closest time was in 2008, that fiscal crisis we had.
Yes.
And it was a bad time to be in business.
Yes, it was.
I mean, I remember my office was in Newark, New Jersey at the time, and Peggy was further out in Jersey, and I was in Brooklyn. And our phone did not ring. When I say it did not ring, like 0 calls. Mm-hmm. So I got in my car and I drove out to Newark because I said the phone must be off the hook or something's happening.
Right.
Why we're not getting a call.
Calls.
And I said, Peggy, I'm jumping out and I'm driving over. And I got there and the phone was working. I'm like, what is going on? No one, we start calling people, no one's answering. And so at that point, this was an overall world reaction.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't, and that's, you have to put things in perspective.
You do.
Right.
But I will say that you have to put it in perspective, but as an entrepreneur of color, you'll feel it even more, usually.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But once we said, okay, no one's calling us, what's our next? That was our pandemic.
Right.
How do we pivot? How do we get out of this? And it was a perfect time to take a class. This when I took that WeBank class, and we had to downsize.
Okay.
Because if your phone isn't ringing,
you got to downsize.
The salespeople, you can't keep all these people unless I go back and take money out of my pocket, which I already said I'm not doing, right? So somebody's got to go, and we couldn't figure out who to let go. Mm-hmm. Everybody's critical to us. Right. We were a really tight team. And I went to the Tuck program, and they had this exercise of, if you're in a boat and your whole team is in the boat with you, and there's a crocodile coming and the waves are high, who's the first person you're going to throw overboard to the crocodile to keep everybody else afloat?
Wow.
Right? Wow. And you had to make a decision. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I remember running out of the class and calling Peggy and saying, we have to throw people overboard to the crocodile. What are you talking about? But after I told her, we sat there on the phone and said, okay, let's line up all our people. And who is the most vulnerable? Whose job can other people do? Okay. And that's the person, and we went down the list. And who's the last man standing in the boat with us? Are we the only people left in the boat? Right? But it's an exercise that we utilized over and over. And we did it between, okay, this person's really valuable. Right. Even though they cost a lot of money, somebody else can pick up their job and do it. So we always kept that in the back of our minds. If we have to streamline in a minute, who are the people
that we can do
without? Who are we going to throw overboard first, and who's going to be in the boat with us?
But it's still frightening to get to a place where the phone isn't ringing.
It is. It is still frightening, but you now know what actions you have to take when the phone doesn't ring. You have to start thinking, okay, if I don't get money in I can't make payroll. We had like 200 employees at one time. That's a lot of payroll.
That's a lot of payroll. It is.
Somebody's got to go.
Somebody has to go.
And so that's a big lesson. I think that's the most I felt like really discouraged and down. And I couldn't see a way of coming out unless the economy changed. But we also got from that class and from Goldman as well, we realized we needed to move into another vertical of business.
Okay.
Like travel isn't doing it. We need, when travel's down, something's up.
Right.
We moved into telecom because of that exercise. Wow. When people aren't traveling and can't go see their families, they pick up the phone and call WhatsApp or whatever.
Okay.
But so if we make that a comparable solution for us, then we'll always have something going. Right.
Have options too.
Absolutely.
That's the idea of being adaptable for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So then because of that, we moved over into telecom because telecom had business at that time and they needed help. And we were very, very happy to help them. And then we moved to insurance because we started looking at those industries that still goes, good time or bad.
Right.
And
that's important.
If that discouragement didn't happen in 2008, we wouldn't have gotten to that point. Of starting, because we were doing well, and, financial services, that's our baby, and we were doing really well until not. Yeah.
So let's tie it all back to grit. One of the things we talked about on Gritfully is that grit isn't just about pushing through the challenges, right? It's about knowing when to exercise restraint and how to cultivate that right mindset. In your experience, how does grit play a role in building a successful, long-lasting business?
Yeah, for me, grit encompasses perseverance and passion for long-term goals, particularly, and it plays a really crucial role in building a successful and enduring business. But it involves maintaining effort and interest over the years. You have to be interested in what you're doing. Even if you fail, and despite adversity, you're going to have different plateaus in your progress. Sometimes you're going to be up, sometimes you're going to be down. And so when you have grit, you're most likely to push through those tough times.
Right. Yes.
Because you have to. Otherwise, you'll be out of business.
Right.
And you have to continue. You have to say, this is a vision that I had, and what can I do? I want to make this vision happen. And even if you don't see the results right away, you still have to keep pushing through that. And again, it's back to the mindset. Right? To having that mindset that really allows you to do that. And I think that growth mindset that we talked about really complements everything we say by encouraging all the learning we talk about.
Yes.
You have to continue to learn. And like even going to college, like my personal story, I didn't finish college till I was in my late 20s. I should say undergrad.
Okay.
I was in my late 20s.
Right.
But I never stopped.
Right.
I would take even one class at a time.
Right.
Because, I was going to Brooklyn College and they asked me to leave because I was too radical at the time. And that kind of threw me off my game because I was in my second year. And now I wound up going to Baruch, and then I was working full time. So you got to go in the evening classes, and then they didn't have the classes I needed in the evening. So I switched to NYU because they had it in the evening, and then NYU became too expensive. So I had to switch to thankfully Marymount started a weekend college.
Well, I've heard about that.
Yes. They were the first to start college on weekends. And so now I could go to work and I could go to school. My job was also paying for it, so I wasn't going to let them get away with that. So I finished and graduated, but that was my undergrad.
Okay.
And then I said, I want a break. But in my head, I'm like, you know what? I want to leave this company someday. let me just suck out every knowledge that they can give me and everything that they can give me, which I did. But they also paid for grad school.
And that worked out well.
And that worked out well. I got promoted because I had the stick-to-itiveness or the grit to continue, against the obstacles.
Yes. And that's what it's about, stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah. And I learned a lot just from that process. I went back to school for my doctorate years and years and years later.
Right.
Because I felt it would complement my business. And that's a lot of grit.
It is.
Because
it is.
It's not easy remembering statistics when you're in your 50s or, you didn't do it since high school.
That's true. Well, that's true entrepreneurial.
But you have to have the grit.
You have to
do those things and to get through all those obstacles.
It's interesting that you said that because I was talking to my father. He was my first guest for this podcast. And he said that a lot of entrepreneurs romanticize entrepreneurship. Do you agree?
I do. I think they romanticize it in the process when they're thinking about it. But when they get into it, the romance ends.
Right.
You're getting a divorce really fast from that notion.
Right.
I think especially when you're in the corporate world and you have people who have to tell you what to do and you have to report to, and you're like, oh God, I want to have my own business because, well, baby, it's not that different. Because you're going to be telling somebody what to do. They're just going to be working for you. And so, yes, we see it as the thing that you could manage yourself, but we're not thinking about the money side. Yeah, I got to make my own money. I'm not getting a paycheck every week. It's not sure money.
No.
It's not sure money.
No, it's not. And it could be 5 or 6, I gave it my all, I got this, and you don't got it, right?
There's nothing.
It could be 5 or 6 no's or 10 no's, right?
And so my mom always wanted me to go have like a union job because you'll always have some money.
Right.
They can't fire you.
Right.
They can't, they have to jump through God and everybody else to fire you.
Yes, they do.
But you'll always have a paycheck. That was her mental stability.
Yes.
She was a union person, worked in that industry. Like down here, I was walking in the garment industry. This is where I grew up.
Right.
My mom was a garment factory worker, and we used to come and see her all the time on these very streets. She always had a job.
Right.
And so that's what we're taught.
Right.
To go to school, get a corporate job. No one says go become an entrepreneur.
No.
They didn't to me when I was younger, even though I have a family full of entrepreneurs. No one ever guided me towards that or said, oh, I want you to take over my business. No, it's go get a job that you're getting a big paycheck all the time. And so that's where the romance comes in when we get to corporate and we're like, God, like this, I'm making that money, but this really sucks.
Right.
And then we're like, if I had my own business, I would just be I wouldn't do that to them. But you're going to do the same thing to your people.
Well, I think the idea is, if I have my own business, I can do what I want, when I want
it.
Schedule.
And you realize you work 24 hours a day.
Yes.
You have no schedule. Your schedule is 24 hours.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, it's not so romantic anymore.
No, it's not.
And you might not be making money.
Yes.
And you have someone asking you, there's a bill due. And
right.
So the romance comes out of it
real quick.
Really, really fast.
I agree.
But
as we wrap up, I really want to encourage our listeners to reflect on their own businesses, whether they are starting the business or where they are on the journey. And where could you be exercising more restraint, more humility, more stick-to-itiveness? And how can you adjust your mindset to handle the inevitable challenges, right? I think Sandi talks about getting comfortable with disappointment. And if you can answer those questions, you're already on the path, right, to preventing failure and achieving sustainable success. And I wouldn't say preventing failure because you really can't prevent failure. I think you can't. Failure is part of the journey. It's really how you manage that failure and how you turn that failure into success, or you pivot. But I'd like Dr. Webster, if you have any final tips for entrepreneurs listening in today. And we have entrepreneurs that are listening in different stages of their business or thinking about starting a business. what are some things that are practical they can start doing now to build this grit, right? To not be uncomfortable with disappointment, to be gracious when you get a no or 10 no's.
Some of the things you can continue to do, we talked about adaptability.
Yes.
You have to stay adaptable.
Without an attitude.
Yes. Well,
That's true.
after you go through it, you lose your attitude pretty quickly.
You do.
So stay adaptable because the economy is changing all the time. And if you want to be successful, you have to be able to ride those waves of up and down. I mean, maybe there are people who never had a downturn in a period, but
Right.
wasn't me. You know,
Right.
we had downturns that weren't steep because we mitigated those. We had plans in place.
Right.
So that we can just jump back
in.
Into the fray, I guess. So stay adaptable.
Stay
is
adaptable.
one.
Okay.
Get that board of advisors because it can be lonely as business owners.
Yes, it can.
Thankfully, I was not a solopreneur. I had my business partner. Now I'm a solopreneur again, but I still call Peggy.
Okay.
Because it is.
Yes.
When you have a question or when you have a problem, you want someone else.
Don't
who
be
you
afraid
can
to ask for help.
And that's a part of it.
Yes.
Not just have someone, but don't be afraid to ask.
Yes, I think so.
A lot of us don't want to share that we're having an issue.
Yes.
Like if I ask 10 businesswomen, how much money did you make last year? They'll go around and around. They never share. I mean, truthfully, even in my WPO group, some women just
They don't
have
share,
a problem with sharing their revenue.
Right, right.
And why? Because you're going to be judged. If I'm not doing well, that's the time you should be sharing because that's the time I'm going to say, Deneen, I only made
Right.
$5,000 last year. Please tell me how you made $5 million
Right.
because I will be copycatting Deneen.
Right.
This is what you
That's
do.
true.
We don't speak up. We only want good news.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't share the bad news.
Right.
And I think most of the pivotal things that I see in businesses is when you share the bad as well as the good, because you get a full picture of your business.
Right. I agree.
And usually we attack when someone says they have a problem, we attack that problem with them.
Yes.
And for them.
Yes.
And everyone's throwing out ideas
Yes.
of, did you think of this? Did you, when I did that, then this is what I got. I know a friend who could help you. You start getting all these things. So yes, you have to speak up.
Yep.
When it's good or bad. Stop hiding. Stop feeling you're personally responsible, especially when you have other people working with you.
Yep.
You're all in the boat together until I kick you out and throw you overboard. But you're all rowing in the same way.
Direction.
So some people don't tell their companies what their employees, how much money they're making because they're like, well, if I tell them, we wrote a chapter in my book called Open Up the Kimono, because when you tell your people how much the company makes and how much you take home, and they're like, oh, I don't want to be you. I want my paycheck, because they're thinking, oh, they made $10 million last year. Well, I had $9.9 million worth of stuff to pay off, including your salaries.
Right.
This is what I went home with. And then they're shocked. They're like, oh my God. Because they equate top line revenues with what you take home.
Absolutely. So they have to get information.
Or they'll say she has a $50 million company. Well, how much do you really have out of that $50 million?
It's true. Yeah.
So I think that's something we all entrepreneurs have to share, good news and bad news as well.
Okay, good. Well, I thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Webster. You've given us so much to think about when it comes to the intersection of grit, strength, and mindset, and being adaptable and pivoting. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Remember, preventing failure isn't just about avoiding mistakes. It's about being strategic, patient, and thoughtful. Stay gritty, and we'll see you next time on Gritfully. Don't forget to like, follow, and connect with us at zebrastrategies.com. Instagram at Zebra Strategies, LinkedIn, Facebook, look up Zebra Strategies, and my personal IG is Deneen Rodney, and my TikTok is Deneen Rodney. So join me anywhere. In the closing statement, I want to say, in the words of my Jamaican grandmother, walk good.